All right, Jay Fowler, I have a pre-show question for you. We were talking about this, and I was just curious. We weren't talking about this. I was talking about this with other people. For the pre-show, what do you think is the hardest part of being a full-time minister? I know, isn't that a hard question? He's also really not happy that I asked him this. Without.
No, it's fine. I just have to I have to get my shares down here, so it gets all in the proper places.
It's true. Please like, share, and subscribe. Yeah, what do you think is the hardest part of being a full-time minister?
For me, the hardest part is whether it's leadership or people in the church. As a minister, it's my full-time job to think about this place, this church, this community, and my whole life revolves around how we can be better as a body, as a people in the surrounding area. My vision, my goal, my mission is all around that, and even my external life, what I do in officiating revolves around what can I do for the church in that officiating arena.
Wow, yeah.
And sometimes it's hard for me to remember that even my shepherds often have full-time jobs outside of the church, and the people do. And so finding that balance in the expectation of what I do and how do I bring them to a place of inspiration while also recognizing that there are some massive demands for their time and attention. I think for me, at least in this season of my ministry, that is the single most challenging aspect of what I do. You have something in there?
Sure. I think the hardest part for me in ministry is sorry, I was reading a post all of a sudden. Apparently I did a controversial post and you didn't know about it. Isn't that fun? I think sometimes it's hard to play the long game. I think being a minister a lot of times is about playing the long game. I think it's really easy to have short-term success and be excited about short-term success, but I think longevity, playing the long game, knowing that people are going to need to be disciples and those kind of things. And so I think, like, as a young minister, I think look at all the success we've had over the year. We've had these events and we have these short-term success. And I think sometimes as a church body, we can get really excited about that too. When in fact, like, we need to be pouring more into like long-term effects, faithful followers of Jesus Christ and stuff like that. And I think that's something that I get short-sighted on pretty fast and pretty easily. And so that's what I would say is the hardest part, is not being blinded by short-term success, but looking for long-term success and those relationships with Christ and discipleship and mentorships and stuff like that.
Yeah, and on the flip side, not being discouraged by short-term failure, right?
Yeah, because short-term failure can turn into long-term success.
Yeah.
We were talking the other day, and I was like, oh man, you used to be so excited about like having 50-something kids go on a mission trip. And it's awesome. It's a great mission trip. But some of the best mission trips that I've ever taken kids on, I've only had 5 to 6 kids sign up to go. And out of those 5-6 kids, those are the ones who I'm so proud of today, because they are serving and following Christ and making those decisions And I'd like to think like some of those are because of those relationships and experiences that they built,
Yeah. It's definitely a different experience, right?
Definitely different. Anyway, that's your behind the beard show.
I like the way we're moving with this. I guess I get to come up with a question next week, huh?
Not necessarily.
Till we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard.
Well, good morning, everybody. This is Behind the Beards. And here on Behind the Beards, we pull the curtain back, take a look behind the scenes, and try to reveal the things that you need to know about your ministers and ministry leaders. I'm Joshua Fowler, preaching minister in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And my brother, partner, I guess not partner in crime. We don't do any crime.
No crime.
No crime. Aaron Partlow, a youth minister in Longview, Texas. It's good to see you this morning, man. I feel like just about the time we get ready to catch up, it's time to start. So what's going on in your world this week?
This week, I don't know. I'm in this weird zone where I'm trying to figure out when to plan a lock-in. I've never been at a congregation that does a ski trip.
Yes.
And we do a ski trip, and I'm really excited about it. I don't ski. When you've had surgery on both your knees, skiing is not something that they recommend that you do. So I plan to go and sit in the lodge and enjoy some cocoa and a good book. If they have internet, maybe even get the podcast. We'll see. But it's I'm really interested, and it'll be a lot of fun. And luckily, like this is what I love. And I might be a unicorn in this scenario, but we've got a couple members who my first day at Pine Tree came up to me and said, "Hey, we do a ski trip, or we've done a ski trip in the past. We'd really like to do it. We want to get your permission to do it." And I said, "Well, you don't need my permission." I said, "You just let me know when." And they said, "Well, we'll plan everything and we'll do it. We just want you to come and be a part of it." And I was like,
what is this madness?
"Yeah, sounds great. Like, thanks. That sounds wonderful. Like, I would enjoy it just to come and enjoy it and spend time with members that I don't normally get to spend time with, and spend time with those teens and have those just be able to like build those relationships and stuff like that." So they'll drive because we take our CDL buses and stuff like that. So it's exciting. Like, I enjoy that kind of stuff, and I enjoy when people come and we've talked about it on the show, like being supportive of your members, and if you want them to support you and your ministry, you have to support them in their ministry. And so this is one thing that they love to do in their ministry, and I'm excited for it. So in March, we're going to go to Monarch Mountain and go skiing.
Awesome. In Colorado?
In Colorado. And I've never done a trip like this, so I'm trying to do whatever I need to do to plan and to help.
So spring break down here in Louisiana is so late. Like, we used to always go on spring break. We would go skiing. But
Really?
Our spring break is usually the week after Easter. This week it's the week before Easter. But that puts it into sometimes middle or late April. A lot of times we come back from spring break and only have like a week or two of school left when we come back. But they do that because a lot of schools in the area have a whole week off for Mardi Gras.
Oh.
No, my kids will get like 2 days off. It's kind of like a Monday, Tuesday.
Your child.
Well, that's true. But even the other kids also only got 2 days. And so, while they would take their week-long ski trips on Mardi Gras, we never really had, the full week to go and do that. So we've had to move ours to around Christmas time, it's kind of cool. But man, is it crowded.
Right.
Around Christmas time. So I miss the snow in Colorado and the skiing we did up there. A lot of fun. You should try skiing. Skiing's not bad for your knees. Okay, maybe it is, but
Hello. I'm not exactly a little featherweight over here either.
Oh, that's funny.
Skiing's not bad for your knees. It's like literally, there's two things the doctor said after I tore my first knee. He said, hey, I'd really stick away from skiing and wakeboarding because I tore my first one wakeboarding.
Pretty high stress. The pivoting and the turning and the pressure.
Pivot.
Oh man. Well, I guess we can get into kind of what we're doing here. Next, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3. We'll see kind of how it goes. But we're going to talk about one of these. Maybe we'll see. Sometimes we get long-winded, and we don't want to keep people for more than what they've allotted.
That's right.
But we're going to do one of our how-to series, and if these go well, we may do a bunch of them and see if we can kind of build a resource library. But
how do we determine if something goes well?
I think we determine about when we hit end, we say, how'd you feel about that? It's like, I think it went okay.
All right.
I think somebody could use that.
I was going to say, it's not like we go and check to see how many people download or listen or subscribe or anything like that.
No, but we've gotten done with some episodes and said, do I really think we should actually upload that into the podcast store, or should we just forget that one ever even happened?
We should just delete that one. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, but building a calendar, I think this is a good little behind the scenes look. And if you do have someone coming in, whether it's a new youth minister or a volunteer, I think it's easy to think, all right, well, let's just throw a bunch of activities down and let's see what happens. But there's a lot more that really goes into putting a calendar of things together. I appreciate you deleting that, because I was looking at that random M on the notes and it was really driving me bananas.
I didn't know what it was. I will say this as a preface, that this kind of changes a lot. So I remember like being a fresh youth minister and coming out, and I knew what my calendar was going to look like and things like that. And so there's, I knew what it was going to look like because I knew what I'd done. But as you do the job longer, sometimes your calendar changes. And that's kind of the stuff we're going to talk about. So, everyone knows how to plan a calendar, to a certain extent. But we're going to go into a little bit more depth, a little bit more, ideas and reasons why kind of we plan and what we do. I maybe reevaluate my calendar every 2-3 years. I know we had Josh Jones on, and he talked about kind of doing a big remodel of what his youth ministry kind of looks like and things like that. So, but I wanted everyone to, I guess my point I was trying to make was when you first get into ministry, your calendar looks a certain way. When you do ministry for a while, it looks a certain way. And at some point you just go, okay, we got to shake the old rug out and kind of see what it is. Because there's a phrase that I always remember, right? It's you can't always, what is the phrase? Now I can't remember it.
You can't
you can only add so much. You can only add so much, right? And if every time you add something, you have to take something away. Because there's only so many hours in the day. There's only so much that parents and teens can commit to. So
that is true. And I would say there's only so many hours in the day that you can commit to.
Well, for sure.
Because one of the things we'll get to later on is determining, do we only do things that are beneficial for the entire group? Do we have an expectation that every single one of my kids is going to come to every single event? If so, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah. Or disappointment.
Or disappointment. That's true. That's a better word than failure. And so, understanding, as we come through here, that I'm providing avenues for people of all kinds to come through. So the real burden becomes how much of myself can I commit to this, stuff.
Right.
But first things first, right? When you're looking at the year ahead of you, what are the things that stay on your calendar and don't ever go away? Like, what are the things that just don't go away?
Christmas party.
The Christmas party. Is that because the church expects it, or because you absolutely love it and you're not getting rid of it no matter what?
I don't know. I think it's yeah, that's a good question. I didn't really think that question was coming my way. That's like one of the first things I look at. I look at where Christmas is, and I look at where our Sunday night youth group nights are, and I pick the one that I think will work best for that. So I enjoy the Christmas party, I guess. So
Yeah,
maybe it's a me thing,
I'm just asking about your
my
mindset.
personal agenda.
And I was even
think
thinking even more basic than that, which is like Wednesday night Bible study.
sure that's something that I do. So I have two colors on my calendar, and I have black and I have red. Black are things that are concrete that kind of stay there year round. And so right now, like the first thing I did on my calendar was every second and fourth Sunday, I marked on their youth group night, youth group night, youth group night. And every Wednesday night, I marked on their youth group night. And I have those washable or those erasable markers or whatever, so you can, take a little wet or lick your thumb and then your finger's black. I was actually just working on my calendar today. So I mark all that stuff in, and that gives me an idea of like this is the base of my ministry, because the base of my ministry really is Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. That's the base, and then
Right.
and then we kind of build off of that.
Well, and I think those things are important to put on the calendar. If for no other reason than it provides a visual representation of something that's expected. Because if I'm just putting the other things, those are they still take time. They're still requiring
time.
families to do some stuff. My own time, family's time, kids' time. I mean, it's still one of those moments. And if I'm honest with myself, those are probably those first things that I put in. Those are the things that I really do expect everyone to be at, because those are, the priority. The times that we gather as a church body, that we're doing things together in that way. So, and for me, the regular things that don't go away, I'm trying to get better at this. I'm not very good at it, because there are things like the Christmas party that I put on there because I really like doing them. Not necessarily because everyone else does, but it's just what I enjoy. And so I'm like, well, that's kind of my baby. But these are the things that absolutely cannot go away. Like everything else besides these first things that we plant on there are, we can remove them if we want to. But there are those sacred cows. We call them sacred cows in the church. Do you have any of those at Pine Tree?
Well, before we get into sacred cows,
Okay.
the other thing I like to do, new youth ministers, new to an area, new volunteers. So I have that big calendar on my wall. It's the 1-year calendar. These are some things these are some insider tips for you that I find very useful. I get all the kids, where my kids go to schools, and I pull out their school calendar. And I get a third color. This is the blue color. And the blue color, I'll put a line, and I'll say, okay. And I'll mark it, and I'll say, this is, I almost said Topeka High. That was weird. This is White Oaks Spring Break. This is Gladewater Spring Break. This is Gilmer's Spring Break. Now, in Texas, they line up. In Kansas, they like purposely didn't line up. I don't know why they were so mean. But I try to mark all those. So I try to mark Spring Break. I try to mark Christmas Vacation, and those other big break moments, so that I know when kids will be out and stuff like that. And I see that as a visual when I start. So
You looked at the notes, didn't you? Did you look at our notes today?
Oh, I did not.
Come on, man. Oh, I did not. That's okay. Go ahead.
Called me out there.
I did.
So anyway, that's just one of the first. But this is like, I guess, like in order of things that like I think about that I do first is I mark those black dates, and then I mark those blue dates, so that I have those on there. But removing sacred cows, that's an interesting story at Pine Tree. I think because of the history of Pine Tree in their youth group over the last couple of years, I just feel like it was pretty bare bones. By the time I walked in mid center. I don't know, COVID. In the COVID season, since we moved last March, it was pretty bare bones. They had Sunday morning Bible class, and that was it. Like they didn't have anything else going on. They had some devotionals. They had some people who were hosting devotionals, but because of COVID, they weren't doing a whole lot. So they were pretty bare bones. So there was not a whole lot of sacred cows. I think the biggest sacred cow in youth ministry is Senior Sunday, and Senior Sunday banquet and stuff like that. I think if you're not paying attention to what your church has done in the past, then you've done yourself a disservice. And if you're not recruiting and listening to the parents about what their expectation is and what they want, you're doing a disservice. And so you have to be really careful, I believe, and figure out exactly what you need to do there in that premise. So
yeah, and I think probably Senior Sunday is one of those things that probably should go on with those things that don't go away. I mean,
it's
you need
one
to
of those
honor
first
those
things.
People and
Yeah, and it's one of those first things that I put on my calendar too. I look at when does school get out, when's graduation, when's Mother's Day gonna happen. I try to avoid Mother's Day at all cost, and then I just try to pick a Sunday, and we get that on the calendar usually because I'm preaching that Sunday too, so it helps our pulpit minister to know that I am, hey, that's the Sunday I'm preaching.
Yeah, there's always a few things. You're looking at a youth calendar. I'm looking at more of a church-wide calendar, and there's a little bit of distinction there, but it's all the same kind of principles. Mm-hmm. Vacation Bible School tends to be a sacred cow at most churches. There's some weird things that you kind of come across, especially when you're walking into a context where you're new, or trying to do things, and someone's like, "Are you having a fall fest this year?" Like. Or they'll say, "When is Fall Fest?" I'm like, "What's Fall Fest?"
Right. Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like,
Nobody's
I'm
told
new
you
here.
about that.
It's like, well, we do it every year, and I was like, well, when are you planning to do it? So you tell me when, and I'll put it on the calendar. I don't really have time to do that, and maybe that's the challenge in that I have in removing some of those things. Not saying that every one of those needs to be removed, but they need to be assessed. If the Fall Fest comes around and we don't really have a lot of things going on and I have the ability to do it, then yeah, let's jump in and do that. But one of the ways that I have found that really determines, are we doing this just because it's a habit or are we doing it because it's useful, is when someone brings it up and you say, you know what, I don't have time to plan that, but would you like to? Mm-hmm. Like, well, no. Like, okay, well, you're expecting it to be next week, and you're the only person that's mentioned it to me. So maybe this is something that we can do without for a year and see how it goes. If we want to re-implement it later, we can. Just to determine whether someone's investment in that, and it may just be a habit.
I also feel like we tend to try to always be hot or cold sometimes. What I mean by that is... Like, we'll look at an event, we'll be like, oh, well, this event, like, does it do any outreach at all? Are we actually inviting and making Christians and disciples with this event? Well, then we shouldn't even do it. Like, this is stupid. We shouldn't do this event. So you might think that when it comes to, like, a Fall Fest. And I would disagree. I think that there are some events that need to be very out there as far as, trying to teach people about Christ and inviting neighbors and things like that. But I also think there are some things that are very intimate for a church to do that helps build relationships and build your church. And I always think about like the feasts of the Old Testament, and I always think about how God set up all of these feasts and things like that. And a lot of those were intimate feasts that you invited people to your house, or things like that to have those, to celebrate those events and things. And so. I think that's always really interesting when I think about planning my calendar, because I'll get in that habit and be like, oh, but this isn't, like, how is this outreach? Is this good? And then I remind myself that not everything has to be outreach. Some things,
that's right.
Some things need to be in reach, but not everything. And so there's that balance there as well. I think some sacred cows that I think a sacred cow, a huge one, is summer camp. For youth ministry, it is anyway. When I was in Kansas, it was tall grass. It was in my contract. It was I had elders who are board members. That it was this is our number one mission field. You will be at Tallgrass.
Right.
Great. I love church camp. That's not a bad thing, guys, when I say it that way. So I was always marked out, mainly because I was the director or I was co-directing. So we were choosing the weeks. So I got to mark it out. Mm-hmm. But I would mark out those 2 weeks in summer for church camp. Now, in this context, it's deer run. And so I try to look at when second session is and when fourth session is, because that's where a largest majority of my youth group goes, because it's a different type of summer camp.
Right.
They run it all themselves. So I try to mark those out, so that I know, hey, those are weeks that I'm maybe not going to try to plan like any big things, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
and
those
just
are
because
so
they're
big.
Just because they're sacred cows, like you said, doesn't mean they need to be removed. Sometimes they
No,
do.
not at all. Yeah.
But they always need to be assessed.
Sometimes they're good.
That's right. I mean, if
Sometimes
these
they're
aren't
really good reminders. Like Senior Sunday is a good thing that we do.
if these aren't one of the core things that we have set up here that are set in stone, that are concrete, these are the foundational core of who we are, not just as a body of believers, but as a body of believers in this place. Mm-hmm. Then everything gets assessed. We look at some of those and we go, you know what? This is really, really good. It's either good for us as a group. It's good for us as a form of outreach. It's good for us to continue to be a part of. Sometimes we look at those and go, we've kind of just been going through the motions on this. Mm-hmm. And if we didn't do this year, nobody would notice. And that's when it's kind of becomes time to maybe make a move to do something a little bit different with that time and that energy. So there's always obstacles you worked around. You mentioned spring break. For us, I have to look. So the busiest weekend of the year in Baton Rouge, there's two of them. One of them is Mardi Gras. Mm-hmm. And the other one is LSU's bye week.
I was going to say because football game or basketball.
Football, definitely football.
That's what I thought.
LSU's bye week always comes the week before the Alabama game, and Alabama is LSU's big rivalry. There's a lot of Alabama fans here in LSU or in Baton Rouge, and Alabama's bye week is also the same week. So if there is going to be a community event in the fall that they want high participation in, it is almost always going to fall on that weekend. And if you plan an event on that weekend, you're going to have trouble getting people to come because there is just so much competition across the community on that. And like I said, school schedules, summer vacations, Christmas vacations, when are a majority of my people going to be likely to be transient, so other community activities, you guys deal with anything there in the Longview? Do you have any big festivals that come through town or anything like that?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. So first when I talked about spring break, it was this is what I mark on my calendars because this is when I know my kids are going to be available to do something. I do look at when we talk about, things that you have to work around. I do look at some of those. I try to find those extra Mondays, those 4-day weekends that teens have, because when I know that they all have that Monday off, I try to plan. I'd like to plan, a retreat of some sort. I haven't gotten to do that here. One of them is that I was so blessed in Topeka to have Tallgrass so close and always ready available, a facility to go to. There's plenty of facilities around here. I just need to do more research in order to find a facility. And I had such a good relationship at Tallgrass that it was so easy to book a weekend or anything like that.
It helps when you're on the board.
Basically, because I had a key. It was just one of those things. It was it was really easy. Because it was part of our church or whatever. So, but those extra Mondays and stuff like that, I try to plan that. I know football season is really important. in Texas. So I've been trying to be more mindful in the football season and figuring out when games are and things like that. So those are kind of the stuff that I see. As far as community activities, I haven't seen a whole lot. In Topeka, it was really cool. We did a summer activity called ShareFest, and it's nationwide, and different places do it. And that was really cool to put on the calendar. And that was one of our church-wide events that we did. And it was really fantastic. It was really good. But that would be something that I would look at and look for as well.
Yeah, I found this year, I realize there's a lot of things that go on in the community. I don't often know how to get into them.
Yeah.
Like there's a parade every Christmas that runs through Broadmoor, which runs right through the neighborhood that's around our church building. And we always find out about it like the weekend of the big parade. And it's like, oh, man, it would have been so cool to be a part of that.
Sure.
And then this year was the first year where I actually got an email about it. It was just a little bit too late to plan something, but now I have that contact. And so next year we could have a church float in the Broadmoor Christmas parade. Parades are a huge deal here in South Louisiana. So there's a lot of those things that float around all the holidays. You got St. Patrick's Day parade, so they'll have a Valentine's Day parade, Christmas parade, Mardi Gras parade, 4th of July, they'll have parades. It's just, it's a part of the
like
culture.
The parade in Louisiana.
People like, and they like to parade, they like to throw things, and they look for any reason to get together and, eat candy and stuff. So, so finding those things to figure to be a part of. I love that you look for those 4-day weekends, not as something to stay away from, but as something to capitalize on.
Yeah.
Because a lot of your people are going to be out of town, but a lot of your people aren't going to be out of town. And so, now I have a chance maybe to build a relationship with some of those kids that maybe aren't quite as active as they have been, but now they got 4 days off of school. They don't have a lot going on. Maybe mom or dad has to work 1 or 2 of those days. And now we can put something together and see something a little different or a different crowd. And so those are some really unique opportunities that come up when we've recognized that. I've also been able to incorporate, like we don't work around LSU's football schedule, but I am cognizant that, hey, if we're going to have people here and this is a fun activity, I'll just let them know. It's like, hey, and by the way, if you don't want to come because you don't want to miss the LSU game or the Alabama game, we're going to have them in the corner so you can pay attention to the LSU game while it's on, and we can still come up here and we have fun. We're going to be playing games. We're going to have dinner. We'll pause it for the devotional, but we'll pick it right up. And so just an aspect of incorporating community life into that, helping our people realize that being a Christian doesn't have to completely segregate you from all the things that go on in your community. And
Right.
we can take those things and combine them, whether it's a tailgate where we're spending time as a church family at a tailgate party together, or doing something on a Saturday night with the game in the background, or going to a Christmas parade and marching through our community and advertising the fact that, hey, we're right here. Come see us if you need something. Those are those things that you can. Sometimes you got to work around them, but sometimes they can become those staples that really anchor your ministry in the community that you're being called to serve. So
I also
don't
think
see them as obstacles.
something that you can look and try to do. Also, if you can't hammer down dates for any set events, is sometimes I'll send out I have in the past. Last year I did just an idea because I got here at Pine Tree. I hadn't been here a year. I don't know what to plan. They say, hey, we just need to do some stuff. So I just did like, December bullet points, January bullet points, February bullet points. And I said, hey, here are some things that I would like to do in these months so that some of them had dates on them. Some of them didn't have dates on them. Some of them we did, some of them we didn't do. It wasn't a defined calendar. It was these are some things that happen in this month we might do something with. I'd really like to, I haven't gotten a chance to plan it. It's February 1st. I'm hoping by the end of this month I can get an event together. I'd really like to do some sort of a Valentine's Day where we talk about teen dating and things like that. spiritual dating and being a Christian in the dating world, and some of those things with my teenagers, because it's Valentine's Day. I mean, I utilize things that are already going to be in their lives and they're going to pay attention to. Yeah, can you do
Right.
it anytime? You can do it anytime, but those are some of the things that I try to do and plan it that way. So
No, and I like to put everything down on a list. Like you said, bullet points are really good because they're not really assigned to anything. But when I put things in bullet points, I can see them and they're kind of compartmentalized. And maybe next week we can talk about striking a balance because it really is about balance.
it is.
And I can kind of get into a rut of planning these things, and I look and I'm like, you know what? I've got a lot of really cool things on here, but we don't have very many times of study and devotion outside
Yeah.
of the regular times. So is it appropriate just to tack a devotional on to a Christmas party, or should we dedicate and devote some time to really in deep study, like you said, about teens and dating? What is it that's captivating their lives in these moments? What's dominating social media? What are the messages that are being piped into their brains on a daily basis that I might need to refute? And some of those we can do casually. Some of them, maybe we need to be a little more intentional about. But putting them all on a big list like that in that bullet point fashion gives me a chance to see what does my balance look like before these all get like pinned on the calendar.
Absolutely.
What's the first thing that you start putting in once you have I call them optional activities. I guess all activities are optional, but once we get to this where we're kind of putting in the filler, is there something that you go to that's just one of your favorite things? Like, nope, that one goes first.
I don't know. Soul Quest. Soul Quest is something that I just love
Oh yeah.
every summer, and I always look for it, and I always put it on the calendar.
I look for a time
That'll
where
be my first thing.
I look for the time where I can cook barbecue. Like traditionally,
yeah.
it's been around Easter, and I'll like the weekend before Easter, I'll smoke a bunch of pork butts and chicken, and just make a big barbecue feast.
That's a really good
And
point.
I look for because everybody always wants to help, and I said, look, it's
Yeah.
like you spend all of your time. You spend like serving me, and you guys do this. Our fellowship, deacons, they're always there. They're always setting up. They're always cleaning up. They're always
Yeah.
preparing. So this is the time where I get to give back to you, and so I'm going to do this, and I don't want you to do anything. I want you to sit back and enjoy it. And so that's the first thing I look for is like, when can I get my gear out, and when can I cook? Because that's just something I love doing.
Sure, and it's like that idea of like when can I take this time to thank the people who support my ministry and can serve and help there. Josh Jones has this excellent comment here. A seasoned veteran in youth ministry, you can tell by this. In addition to balancing events, I also think about events that I'm wanting to lead up to, like fall retreat and camp, etc. And that's extremely important and smart to do. So I look for those those Mondays that the teens have off. I know we're gonna do a retreat around that weekend, or to be honest, like we just got back from Winterfest. I take a lot of notes at Winterfest, and we do for all of January on my Wednesday nights. We do a Winterfest follow up. So my teens who weren't there, it doesn't. It doesn't. I didn't say old. I said seasoned. That was good. By the way, your profile picture on Facebook is super good. So good job. I love it. Anyway, what was I saying? Anyway, so
It takes some leading up to some preparation.
So that helps you kind of pre-plan for those events. Get your kids ready for those events. Hey, guys, we're gonna really talk about spiritual gifts and focus on this, but there's some pre-stuff that you need to do before you can really dive into that, which actually can really support and make your weekend or your camps or your trips better, because you can really focus in on those because you've already done that legwork to get there. So that's
The other thing is
smart and great to do.
When I put camp and retreats and things down on my calendar, you know what I always forget to put on the calendar? Registration deadlines.
Oh yeah, that's pretty smart. I should
I
probably do that too.
always forget that. I get there and it's like, I could prepare my people. They're still going to ask me the questions, but I could prepare them
Always.
better if I would put it on the calendar. Say, hey, this is the deadline for this camp. This is the deadline for this camp. But because like you said, those require some planning, not just in the preparation, but in preparing the people, to the kids, the families, the parents, as they're looking forward as well. So
I also go through, and in the blue, I also mark the conferences that I look forward to going to. So I have now it's a question mark right now because I'm thinking about if I'm going to go to ACU lectures as well. So, but I also mark my vacation time on my calendar as well. Typically, my wife and I, we try to take vacation in August, post summer, and take that break and that relaxation. And Oregon's really nice in August. I enjoy Oregon in August. So we usually try to take vacation a week and a half, and go up and see my parents. But that's important for me to know, because if I put that on my calendar, then I know that that's coming up, and I know to plan for that. Hey, I'm going to be gone those 2 Sundays, and I'm going to have that done. One thing that I enjoy about, some people are anti-curriculum, some people are pro-curriculum. One thing I like about having curriculum is that the Sundays that I know that I'm going to be gone, I can pull those lessons out and I can email, and I hand a physical copy to my teachers.
Yeah.
And I say, if you have timed email, it's even better, because sometimes I will set up a timed email that'll go out, in 3 or 4 days, and be like, okay, this is going to go to them. So, hey, in case you lost it, here's the lesson plan for Sunday. Kind of an idea.
Yeah, I didn't, even in preparing for this, I hadn't really thought about that. But that is one of those really important things to put on there are,
preparing for this, I haven't thought about preparing.
I hadn't thought about the conferences and stuff. And it's not.
I
just
know when
about
conferences
vacation.
are. You usually know when conferences are going to be, and for me, the reason that I do this, people, is because Josh talked about it at the beginning. But there's this balance, right? There's a balance that as ministers, like, we have to have, because there's a real temptation to just be super busy, and to just go, and it's really easy to get burnt out and get exhausted. It's really easy to burn your kids out too. It's really easy to add that extra stress to your family's lives as well, because we just have so much going on. And so being able to have a visual to see, hey, this is all that we do, this is all that I do, this is where I'm going to be, and all that kind of stuff, it kind of helps give me that balance. It makes me know that, hey, this Friday is my day off, and it needs to be one that I really respect this Friday, because I'm about to be gone, or I'm about to be super busy. This is the last really free day that I'm going to have to spend with my wife and my son.
Right.
And that kind of stuff. And so that helps me to be a better dad. It helps me to be a better husband. Helps me to be a better youth minister as well. And this is all stuff, by the way, I hate. Like, this is the stuff that, like, I have to drag myself into the office and I have to do it because this is the stuff. Because I would rather just go and hang out and be with the teens, and preach and teach and do that kind of stuff. But this is the stuff that I think really gives you that fundamental and that planning and that part of ministry that we don't really think about.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of work.
I'm looking forward to next week. We can talk a little bit more about balance maybe, and what kind of events, how often, how regular.
Yeah.
Because and you're spreading across several ministries sometimes too, between children's, middle school, high school.
Yep. I was about to go into that.
And it's more challenging than I ever realized until someone said, "Hey, what's the calendar look like?" I'm like, I hadn't really thought about it. It's like, well, the school starts this time, and we're kind of making plans. What does you have planned for spring break? And people start asking me questions. I'm like, man, I hadn't really thought that far ahead. It's like, I should probably think ahead, huh? It's like, yeah, you should. And so sometimes those things just they kind of just hit you out of nowhere. So I think it's a good thing. You have a behind the beards moment for this first part?
I think one of my biggest behind the mirrors moments for this is be prayerful over your calendar. I feel like there's a certain point for me. Christmas and New Year's is always busy, but it's also like I have a lot more some downtime. I like to spend that time to be prayerful over the calendar, and so I think a behind the beards moment, if you're new to the podcast, or behind the beards moment is something specifically that somebody outside of ministry might need to know about your minister in this occasion. And I would say there are sacred cows to the church, but there's also some sacred things to your ministers as well. And we try to do the best we can. I would say never be afraid to come with new ideas, but also keep in mind that there has been a lot of work that's been put into the calendar as well. We all need to learn and be flexible, and that includes ministers, and that includes church members as well, and that includes calendar ideas and other stuff. So,
yeah, I agree. And if there's something you want on the calendar, we want input. Like, I want to know what's important to you. But I also, hope that if it's important to you, that you'll also be willing to help take some of the load off of the planning and preparation in that as well. That the calendar isn't something that's just kind of thrown onto a board and see what sticks. But there's a lot that goes into it. So it's good stuff, man. I think it's the keeper today.
I hope so. All right. Hey, well, for some reason I was like, wait, how do we end the podcast? I literally forgot how we end the podcast. But, hey, I want y'all to know this. We really appreciate you being here today. And Absolutely. I know we say this every week at the end of the podcast, but I really appreciate y'all being here today. It is awesome always to see the live chat going and having your guys' comments. Like, it always really encourages me, and so I appreciate that. And I know Josh does too. We will remind you of something today. Galatians 6:9. Do not grow weary in doing good. This world is messy. This life is messy. Ministry is messy. Church life is messy. It's hard, but we all have to be under one roof serving God. And that's the greater purpose. That's the greater goal here. And so don't grow weary in doing good. Allow Christ to use you to do something different, something good in His name. I'm Aaron, and this is Josh, and we will see you next week on Behind the Beards.
Till we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard.
The awkward pause. I was like, oh yeah, that's what's next.
Yeah, my brain is like not working. So I don't know what I did. It's probably because I drank decaf coffee this morning and not caffeinated coffee. So I'm like super fogged. That was just bad.
I had a Preston asked me last week. He said, what do you think Sam is going to think in 10 years when he goes back and looks at all of his after show appearances?
I don't know. That kid he's crazy. That kid is crazy. That's funny. I never even thought about that. What would I think about in 10 years if we're still doing Behind the Beards? That'd be crazy. I can't believe we're still doing it now. But I love it. I love
100th episode this year.
That's unreal. That is unreal. I feel like I was going to say something, and like everything else, I have like just forgotten it. It's really bad. Man, we had a lot of people in the live comments, though. That was cool. It's nice.
It is. See you guys later next week.
Yeah, see y'all next week. Thanks, guys.